Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. We're going to go over some very interesting channelings from Quo. Quo is a principle of higher density social memory complexes from several different parts of the galaxy, including our own solar system, that are in several different densities of light that teach, originally consisting of Ra, who channeled the raw material in the Law of One, also including Latui and Hatan, as well as some other interesting entities. These sessions are amazingly transformative, and it doesn't really matter that it's being channeled or not. You'll find something from them on a base level, just amazing wisdom and philosophy, beautifully written, very gentle and sensitive, higher intelligences that is a lot easier to understand than the Law of One material. That's why a lot of people really enjoy the Quo material. The Law of One material is very dense, doctoral level metaphysics that's very specific in the language that they used. And I enjoy the Quo channelings a little bit more, although I love them both. And the Law of One has transformed my life. Hopefully you've gotten a chance to go and read some of the Law of One material. We haven't gone over in specific to the raw material as much, and I need to do that more. We've covered many different sections of the Law of One, including the higher self, intelligent infinity, and a variety of other topics, including the tarot. The reason the tarot is interesting is they don't look at it as a predictive model, but as a way of understanding the archetypes. And this sort of changed the way I looked at the tarot and the horoscope, and even the Kabbalah, the tree of life, the connections, the different pathways on the tree of life, is really representative of different archetypes that kind of make up the personality shell of this particular logos of this solar system that makes up this particular creation that we're in. And this is sort of how each of the different solar systems work. They all have their own sort of archetypes, and the archetypes are all indicated in the tarot. And you have the magician, you have the fool, you have the empress, you have all these different characters, and they're actually parts of you, very much like states. So when they teach about archetypes, I'm always interested, and I still don't fully understand that aspect of the Law of One material. And also another amazing channeling on if you can use your vibration to attract discarnate teachers that come to you, in addition to guides, and how to get teachings from discarnate teachers that I found interesting as well. We'll talk a little bit more about them afterwards. So we begin with a channeling delivered on February 12th, 2006. The question is, how does working with archetypes to become them help us in the development of the magical personality? Now, side note, the magical personality is also the higher self, and there is more details about the magical personality in the Law of One material. Carla Channeling says, "We are those known to you as the principle of Quo. Greetings in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator, in whose service we come to you this day to join in your circle of seeking. Thank you, my friends, for inviting us to be a part of your circle. We are most happy to respond to your question concerning the use of the archetypes in the pursuit of adepthood. However, as always, we would caution you strictly to use your very adequate and competent powers of discrimination to discern what of that which we have to say is helpful to you and what is not resonant to you. If there's no resonance in anything we say, no matter how intellectually interesting it might be, we ask you to leave it alone. Follow and use the information that does not resonate to you, my friends. And in that way, we may be assured that we are not infringing on your free will, but rather are enjoying a conversation with equals. We would not be an authority over you, and we cannot be considered as that and have peace in our minds about that which we offer you this day. Therefore, we greatly thank you for your kind indulgence in this manner. Your query this day revolves around the use of the archetypal mind and its study within the process which you have called evolving the magical personality, or becoming a priest or an adept. We realize that the one known as T has been concerned about the issue of adepthood and priesthood, and therefore we would like to address this concern as our first topic of discussion, for we feel that it bears much of import. Not only the one known as T, but this instrument as well is cautious when faced with the possibility that one might, by asking a certain question or following a certain line of inquiry, be committing oneself to the full requirements of a lifelong intensive study of the magical personality, the tree of life, and the inferred duties and responsibilities accruing to a member of the white magical priesthood, that surprisingly large and largely unknown group of entities who for millennia of your time upon your planet have maintained stewardship of the earth, of those energies beneath the earth, and of those energies within, what this instrument calls inner or unseen planes, thus working ceaselessly and without any regard for personal fame or renown to balance your island home on its keel as it sojourns about your sun and as your sun sojourns about the edge of the galaxy. By identifying with their native mountains, plains, and oceans, by calling down the highest of the high, and by dealing fearlessly and constantly with that which this instrument calls the shadow or the unknown side of self, this priesthood has served ceaselessly. And there is that energy within many of those in this group that resonates to the idea of a life lived in service and a life lived in priesthood. We are aware of the concern within this instrument and the one known as T. There might be any hint or shadow of ethical commitment that would be beyond that which entities living as you live in the lives that you live could complete. We wish to assure each that those mental reservations create in the metaphysical world a contract not to be such a priest. There is a limit that you have set upon yourself. You wish to relate to the world directly. You do not wish to go into retreat from the world. You wish to engage in the world. This is acceptable within the limits of a more generalized conceptualization of the commitment to living life as a priest or an adept. There is a general sense in which every entity is a priest. It is said in your holy work that you are a nation of priests and a holy people. We believe this to be precisely correct, and as several of you have noted during this weekend's rich conversation, which we have greatly enjoyed being a part of through this instrument's mind, the priestly aspect of your incarnations is becoming and more clear to you. You are becoming more and more aware that you carry within you the consciousness of what this instrument calls the Christ, or unconditional love. That which you are pursuing so relentlessly, that being, the one infinite creator, or alternately, the truth about yourself, lies waiting for you, not outside your awareness, but rather at the very heart of it. You seek for that which is within your heart of hearts. In that way, adepthood or priesthood can be seen as the movement into the outer courtyard of the heart and into that inner door to the sanctum sanctorum, your heart of hearts, and the throne of the one infinite creator. Or is it instead, my friends, a manger? And does the Creator await you as a child or an infant lying in the straw, waiting for you to swaddle it with your recognition of the Christ within? Do you seek an authority figure in your heart? Do you seek a white-haired ancient Lord of Lords, the Old Testament figure that judges as well as loves? What figure do you have in your mind that partially reveals and partially hides the truth of creatorship? What do you seek? Do you seek an image? Do you seek an icon? Or do you seek that mystery which lies beyond all words? It bears the name of unconditional love. Therefore, on this point, we would say to you that if you genuinely, sincerely, and honestly seek the truth of your own being, and if you are willing to commit ineluctably and simply to living your life in the pursuit of that seeking, You are worthy to be called a priest and an adept. You may not be able, because of your lifestyle, to commit hours of each day to the ritual involved in priesthood as it is seen in holy orders. You may not be able to invoke and evoke specific energies at specific times in a ritualistic manner, for that would indeed take a great deal of subtle work in visualization that would require you to maintain a level of focus given only to what this instrument would generally term madmen, saints, and fanatics, such is the nature of priesthood. We expect and understand that this is not the level of your commitment, and we specifically express our understanding that this is ethically acceptable in terms of the metaphysical balance, not only of your individual life, but also the life of your group as you experience yourselves during this gathering, and that group which is the tribe of humankind upon planet Earth. Your service is acceptable as it is, just as it is, and without improvement. You are already upon what we would term a sound and good path. And we would thank you for being on that path, for calling us to your group, and for being ethically conscious and concerned enough to have a cautionary feelings concerning these questions. We turn now to gaze at the magical personality. The definition which this instrument has learned from the works of the one known as William is simple enough. A magician is one with the ability to effect changes in consciousness at will. You have been a magician each time that you have faced a situation in life and made a conscious choice to respond to catalyst that is offered you in a way which was not automatic in your responsive system. When you have chosen a higher path, when you have chosen a soft word instead of a harsh one, a kind action instead of a rude one, or an honest if hard answer instead of a hypocritical though easy one, you've acted in a magical way, choosing to lift your consciousness to a higher path. This instrument calls a good deal of this kind of work that she does tuning. And we would agree that there is something to be said for seeing the tuning of your consciousness in this figure of speech. What is it to create changes in your consciousness by an act of will? There are three basic factors weighing on this matter. The first is yourself as an actor and a chooser. Second is your will, its recognition as a factor, and its discipline by your daily work. The third is that which you effect as an act of will, that choice that lies before you that is entirely subjective. No two people shall see catalyst in precisely the same way. Therefore, no two people, as magical entities, shall create the same change in consciousness. It is the right use of will that becomes the key to the working of the puzzle that lies before you when you face a choice in how to respond to a situation that you perceive. It is in the state of your mind, as you approach the present moment, that the use of the archetype lies. The archetypical mind, as has been iterated often during this gathering, is a resource of the deep mind. It is a plat, if you will, of energy paths that are possible within the system of illusion that constitutes space/time and time/space within third density upon your planet. Side note, plat is spelled P-L-A-T. In the footnotes, they define plat as a map showing actual or planned features such as streets and building lots, so it's not the same plat. They go on to say it is a finite, delimited resource created for use by third density entities within incarnation upon planet Earth. It is a comprehensive encyclopedia of what this instrument has several times called the roadmaps available for getting from here to there within the inner geography of that infrastructure of roads, byroads, lanes, and little tiny paths that constitute ways in which you may turn and make choices when you are investigating how to respond to that which you see coming into your view in the present moment. Most often, you use the archetypes inadvertently. You become one of them by moving through a situation with a certain degree of purity. We cannot be more specific than this, for within each situation there is a wide range of ways in which you may be pure, depending on how you are assessing the situation that you see before you and from what standpoint you are assessing it. There are many levels from which you may view consensus reality, and from each level, there are many choices that you make before you make the choice of how to look at a given situation, which bring you to the point of choice biased or distorted in a certain set of parameters, all of which are useful. We have often said through this instrument that there are no mistakes, and in this we would say it with a special emphasis. When you are working with that which is quite nebulous to the conscious mind, you must not restrict yourself to the concept of being right or correct, but rather offer yourself permission to explore resonant paths of seeking. When you feel that you may perhaps have evoked or become part of the archetypal part of the human experience, that does not mean that you have moved from humanhood to an archetype. It means that you have followed yourself with enough clarity, honesty, and purity that you have made room within the dedication of your seeking for your experience to be filled with the resonance that moves from finity to infinity, from specificity or locality to universality or non-locality. Becoming an archetype is a kind of knowing that does not depend on fact, detail, or learning. Touching into the archetypal is touching into the entirety available within specificity. It is certainly not available consciously or by the application of learning or analysis. Archetypal truth is essential, and as several have suggested throughout this weekend, that which is archetypal remains forever mysterious, so that it is by your being that you explicate and bear witness to that which is pure or purified within you. This instrument would call this purified substance feeling or emotion, and we would agree that these are the words closest to describing those rivers of energy that water the land of archetypes, that rich mountainous treasure trove in which one range leads to another, and to another, and to another in an unending set of discoveries and realizations. That which is magical within you awaits your choice. Let us look then at the nature of the choice before you and the resources with which you meet it. In each moment, your choice is to accept yourself as the self that your culture and your environment suggest that you are, or to accept yourself as something far more articulated. It may seem grandiose to those who like the idea of being powerless and without responsibility in any ethical sense. To those who are thirsty for the one infinite creator, it seems a positive blessing to be pulled forward by the desire to seek. Those who wish to become more than they know are those who would choose to become co-creators with the forces placed into motion at the time of birth. When you choose to accelerate the pace of your spiritual evolution, you are activating a magical portion of yourself. That is the nature of your choice. It is perfectly all right to choose to rest and refrain from the practice of the recognition of the power of your own being. When you have gathered your strength and wish to step forward upon your journey, you are indeed the fool. Whether or not you feel that you need baggage, you pick up yourself, your energies, and your intentions, and you leave the familiar, safe, and sheltered valley of your past understanding. Thus, all entities conceiving of themselves as working on their magical personalities may also conceive of themselves as being upon a journey in common with many, many others. This is a pilgrimage in which you are never alone. Certainly, each entity is solitary within the confines of its own choices and its own processes. However, other shards and splinters of the sunshine of the Creator are walking beside you, praying for guidance from the same Creator, being shined upon by that great and unending source of light and love, gaining inspiration from the same guidance. So although in some ways you are endlessly alone, if you can open your awareness to the larger vision of your situation, you may see that you walk with many in a space made sacred by each footstep, each tear, each sigh, each moment of rejoicing, each time of wonder, amazement, and awe, and each midnight of suffering and woe. These are all most sacred. That which surrounds you upon this journey is a many-storied, almost infinite world. As you move the focus of your perception, you will choose to focus upon certain portions of the 360 degrees of investigation possible to one who is fully able to turn and gaze in any direction. Each time that you change the focus of your seeking, something will be illuminated, and many other things will be cast into the darkest shadow. You will always be working in what seems to you to be poor light. You've gazed at the many indications in the tarot cards, images of the sun, the moon, and the tendency within spirit of the moon to overshadow and hide the sun. That is the environment of your seeking. You may never become able to invoke archetypes or allow them to come into your being and fill you with the skill and the art of the true magical adept. You may have to content yourself with what you yourself consider to be imperfect attempts to invoke or become the archetype. We assure you that in the process of forming the intention at each moment that you form such an intention to seek and to serve the one infinite creator, to heighten your devotion to the one infinite creator, or to increase your passion for developing your will in order to maximize your service to the creator. You've done work that, in a magical sense, is highly polarizing regardless of the actual outcome of your intention. Make the shift within your mind of the doingness of consensus reality to the beingness of time/space or metaphysical reality. Realize that those things which in the physical are mere shadows, that is, your thoughts, become living, breathing objects, essences, and creatures in the metaphysical world. Your intentions are very real, metaphysically speaking, and your subsequent actions, metaphysically speaking, are as the shadows of those intentions. That which may seem glorious in consensus reality may have almost no weight in the metaphysical world, and that which seems only a shadow in the physical world may have tremendous weight in the metaphysical world, thereby turning logic on its ear and all of your ambitions to dust. Please allow that to happen forthwith if there is any materialistic implication having to do with actions that are real in space/time. Release them, my friends, and know that your work is the work of the crystal that wishes to tune itself. For each of you is a creator, and you are a creator in a certain way. You are an instrument. You have certain characteristics. Much as any crystal does, you are set up with regularity within the logic of your own structure, metaphysically speaking. Your energy system is balanced in its imbalance in a certain way that works, and that is your perfection at this time. It is a stable setting. The one who wishes to adjust the setting of the crystal is one who wishes to do magical work. You are working with the structure of your own consciousness in order to improve your tuning or your setting as an energy field that is receptive, much like crystal radio is receptive. This instrument has before used the analogy of herself as that which can receive a radio station. When she attempts to tune for channeling, she is tuning for the highest and best source of information that she can receive as a stable conscious entity. She's tuning the crystal of her instrument. When she's done that to the best of her ability, she consciously sets and crystallizes that setting, and then she carefully chooses the recipient or source of the contact that she is going to channel. In a less formalized and much more everyday way, everyone at all times is receiving the love and the light of the one infinite creator and is transducing it to a certain extent as it moves through the energy system of the chakras. By the time that it leaves your energy system at the violet ray, moving through into the octave ray of the crown chakra, it has undergone the adjustments necessary to move through your energy system. If you are resting on your default setting and not attempting to tune your instrument, then your signal, shall we say, shall be correspondingly unfocused and weak. Depending upon the work that you have done in the present moment, meeting those situations that you see in your present moment, your output may well be much different than your default setting. You may have chosen to work with the energy of the one infinite creator in several different ways, sharpening it in this way, diffusing it in that way, and so forth. If you, as a crystal being, have come to a point within your incarnation where you are relatively restful and content with yourself, then you are probably allowing a good deal of light of the one infinite creator to pour through your system undistorted. Discontent and worry is the one perturbation that will most effectively destroy the energy of light. Consequently, as you work to be more and more comfortable within your own skin, you are not being selfish. You're not taking too much time for yourself. You are, rather, working in service to the Creator and to others by clearing your own energy system. It is not selfish to do this work, but rather of service to others. It is very difficult tangle within the mind to many service to others oriented entities to be able to set aside the time and the attention for oneself that is indeed needed for you to keep clear and useful and an instrument for spirit. Nevertheless, you may have to take that time 5 minutes at a time around the edges of the busy day, but we assure you that if you choose those 5 minutes carefully, and if you pour yourself into those 5 minutes, you shall create magic aplenty. You shall not run out of time, for you can do much in a small space, magically speaking. You are attempting to take that which your culture has taught you is worthless, your thoughts, your feelings, your hunches, and your intuition, and to glean from them the information that your culture has not respected or honored. In doing so, you are bereft of the tools comfortable to one who deals with the mind. For in doing magical work, or in attempting to create one's focus for being increasingly magical, you are moving constantly to move from head to heart and from thinking to knowing. What is the faculty of knowing? The one known as S was speaking this weekend of the difference between that energy that comes through the soles of the feet and up through the base chakra or the red ray chakra and pours upward and out through the top of the head, and that energy that is called forth by seeking that energy which is pulled down through the gateway to intelligent infinity at the crown chakra by the force, the focus, and the purity of your desire. The one known as S noted that the place where those two energies met was that point at which the tremendous energy of what you have called the Kundalini lies, the object of the Kundalini movement being to create the evolution of spirit that is symbolized by the trope or figure of Kundalini. That place where the Kundalini rests within you is that place from which you may most stably and faithfully work. Attempt then, in preparing yourself to do magical work, to, as this instrument has said, become truly humble and empty. Examine your chakra system each day, looking for distortion, either overactivation or underactivation. When you find it, sit with it, gaze at it, invite it, and seek to understand what is triggering your attention on this particular issue. If you can find distortion within yourself, from which this fountain of triggering effect stems, move to the origin of that trigger and see what you can do to unearth this buried treasure of it. By removing the gift from its surrounding ore, create the appreciation of the diamond that you have made from your suffering. See the beauty of its purity and know from experience the tremendous pressure of suffering in the fiery furnace of the catalyst of an incarnation. What it has cost you to produce this beauty, this truth, and this treasure. Spend time, if you can, in the silence each day. We do not concern ourselves with your mode of entering the silence or what you do during that time. You may do nothing. You may have a practice of prayer, visualization, or other regularized or ritualized method of structuring such time, or you may simply go on a solitary ramble, listening to the calls of the birds and gazing at the beauty of the trees, bushes, and the meadows. However you structure this time, we encourage you to commit yourself to a daily practice of the presence of the one infinite Creator whose voice is only heard in silence. Lastly, we encourage you to practice recognition of the Creator. Know it when you see it, whether it is within yourself, within nature, within others, or simply within the moment itself. We thank you for this question. As always, we have barely scraped the surface of this fascinating and deep topic, but we thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts with you. We are those of Quo. Yes, Quo. The question has to do with what archetypes would it help to invoke as one goes about beginning and spiritualizing a mated relationship or a spiritual companionship. We are those of Quo and are aware of your query, my brother. Rather than suggesting a single archetype in terms of addressing your query about how to approach adjusting one's very personal and intimate practice to the exigencies of a relationship with a significant other, as this instrument calls that general relationship of the mated pair, we would say that a characteristic that has been discussed during this gathering repeatedly may be focused upon as helpful. That characteristic is the characteristic of the courting or wooing male, which courts the potentiator, or the reaching for that which awaits the reaching. Whenever an entity, whether male or female, is considering how to approach negotiating something as personal as a prayer life or practice or rule of life with a mate, that entity may see itself as that figure which goes forth to court or to woo rather than to control or to manipulate. The mate has a dynamic with the self within which there are areas of commonality. The magic of such a situation then is in finding the area of commonality and staying within it with the utmost of fastidiousness, creating a spiritual practice that is satisfying to both entities in spite of their many differences. It is a challenging and subtle negotiation, and negotiation it is, for there is no quick way to move from the standpoint of beginning such a discussion to the outworking or a manifestation of a happy result. Working against such a happy result is not only the difference between you and the other self, but also the variation between your true self and that part of yourself which you know and are able to share without distortion. The better you know yourself and the more of yourself you can see, including those parts which this instrument would call less developed or more of the shadow side, the more successful you shall be in finding your area of commonality and make the most of it without significant distortion. Question quo. I have a question that has to do with the spirit as articulated in the archetypes. Can you comment on the home of the spirit from your point of view and what differentiates it from the body and the mind and the mechanics thereof? We are those of Quo and are aware of your query, my brother, and we have a very tricky situation looking at your question because of the fact that in several of those entities within this room at this time, this forms an active portion of their process. Consequently, we must be guarded in our discussion, and we apologize for this, but it is necessary in order to maintain the freedom of will. That which we may say without infringing upon free will is this: the spirit is that which allows travel between the inner and outer planes of third density. In terms of its function within the archetypal mind, it is difficult to explicate how the shuttle of spirit functions because of the fact that it functions in what the one known as dawn called the 90-degree phase shift, taking one from space-time to time-space. There is an extra-dimensional change in location, or even order of magnitude in a sense, between space-time and time-space. You move from a very microcosmic and ordered chaos, shall we say, in terms of space-time, to a much less obviously ordered but far less chaotic and very vast situation in time-space. And you do that within the body, without leaving incarnation. You do it safely and you do it consistently, working within the archetypical mind. It is that which is used to create the creatures of visions and dreams. And as you touch the edges of archetypal imaging, those messengers come back to you, called through the shuttle of spirit into manifestation, be they from first density such as elementals or second density such as messengers of your totems, or be they those entities from the inner planes from many densities that may well be called to your seeking self by the radiancy of your vibrations and the focus of your desire. That final answer of being able to seek a discarnate teacher brought me to this channeling given in February 8th of 2009. Is it possible to achieve a level of vibration with meditation to attract the help of a particular discarnate teacher? Or is meditation a practice best worked on alone? We are those known to you as Quo. Greetings in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator, in whose service we come to you this day. We thank this group for inviting us to join your circle of seeking, which you have created as a measure of your own seeking of the truth. It is our pleasure to speak to the question of the one known as El, as always. It is our particular pleasure to speak upon the subject of meditation, for this practice is the straight way to the acceleration of a seeker's rate of spiritual evolution. Meditation is seemingly a simple matter. The entity stops looking outward, stops responding to the outer environment, and even stops attending to his own thoughts as far as following those thoughts and analyzing their content or chewing through various processions of thoughts. In meditation, such thoughts are seen as noise rather than signal, and allowed to rise and fall as they will, without the mind of the meditator being activated. That would seem to be the entire activity of meditation, closing out the outer world, entering the inner world, leaving the world of words and voices and issues, and entering the world without voices, without words and without issues. However, meditation is much more than entering the silence, for there can be a silence of mind which simply indicates boredom. Silences within the space-time world may not offer anything except a quick exit into sleep. However, silence is a key that opens the door into time-space. Silence is the transit between the world of the mind and the world of consciousness. The mind of space-time is handy and useful for many things within your outer world. It is not useful for becoming more aware of one's own deeper nature. It is not a good tool from which to investigate the world of spirit. People will often think of the mind of consciousness and as one and the same thing. However, we would differentiate between them. The mind is a space-time mechanism, whereas consciousness is a time-space phenomenon. Now, as one goes into meditation, one is seeking to enter one's own consciousness. That consciousness dwells in undistorted form at the heart of your being. It is a faculty in its ultimate sense. It is that which is shared by all aspects of the universe whatsoever, for it is the consciousness that we would call the Logos, or the one original thought of love. This is the value of meditation, that it moves you from mind to consciousness, and from the surface of consciousness gradually deeper and deeper into the essence of that one great original thought of love. Further, when you are in meditation, you are vibrating in congruity with all others who have attained your particular present level of consciousness. Therefore, the state of consciousness is a powerful one, and is that which becomes more and more powerful as one is able to allow the process of meditation to clarify and simplify that self-perception of consciousness so that it gains more and more of the characteristics of that one great original thought of unconditional love. The goal of meditation, then, is to create the progressive increase of awareness of one's true nature as a being of love. It is an awareness or a complex of awarenesses that can be sustained to a degree when you open your eyes and come out of meditation and re-enter the noisy world of the everyday. When meditation is practiced regularly, the results begin to multiply. One may count among those results an ever deeper awareness of the truth that is beyond words, an ever deeper appreciation of consciousness itself and of the nature of the Logos, and an ever wider and more tolerant perception of the illusory world of humankind in all of its aspects. It is perfectly acceptable to desire to have the benefit of the teachings of a discarnate entity. Within the environment of yoga, from which the one known as Paramahansa Yogananda sprung and flourished, it is quite orthodox and normal for a student who wishes such a discarnate teacher to request the teacher. The request may be repeated at arising and going to one's sleep, and it is encouraged to keep a close watch upon one's dreams once one has set one's intention and made this request. It is not within our purview to be able to assess for you, my sister, whether or not this shall be what you would call a successful request. We would be doing our learning for you were we to opine in that regard. We may say that such connections are common in the world of yogic masters, and that it is a matter of compatibility of teacher and student as to how successful this request is in producing a solid feeling of connection with the one known as Paramahansa. Again, judging between various ways of meditating, most especially whether it is more efficacious to work with a master or to work upon one's own, is not within our purview. There are reasons that opining on this would infringe upon your free will, and we feel that you are able to see how this may be so. However, we may offer you some thoughts about proceeding on your own. Firstly, we would suggest that using techniques in addition to the classic meditation of sitting in the silence and allowing one's focus to restrict itself to one's breath is sometimes helpful. Although the basic following of one's breath and sitting in silence is the centerpiece of any meditation technique, yet also there are supportive meditation techniques that the meditator who is working on his own may find helpful. Aspects of meditation which can be worked or looked at from several different techniques or ways of differentiating between various parts of the archetypal mind are available. Each of them has benefits, and in truth, it is up to the preferences of the meditator as to which type of archetypal meditation he would prefer. One way of moving into the archetypal mind is to consider the glyph called the Tree of Life, meditating first upon the various aspects of the Creator placed within that glyph. Going first down the center column, then down the feminine column, then down the masculine column. Once this had been done for a considerable length of time, considering first one, then another in different meditations, one could spend meditative times contemplating the relationships between them as demonstrated and articulated in that glyph. Another way of letting one's consciousness sink into the archetypal mind is to consider the 12 signs of the zodiac in astrology, and then the relationships between the various houses and so forth. This again is a considerable body of assorted roads into the subconscious and into the roots of consciousness. Conducting such a series of contemplations would be a lengthy process. The third way in which we might recommend working to move one's consciousness deeper into the roots of consciousness is to consider the 22 cards of the tarot and the relationships between them. Such a series of meditations may not at first seem useful. There may seem simply to be a mishmash of perceptions, none of them coming clear or clean, and indeed, one may spend literally years of your time moving through these contemplative meditations before there is the inner point at which the various meditative points come together within the subconscious to create a pattern within which one may see one's various concerns and ethical considerations. At that point, and only at that point, does it become that which feels useful. However, in our opinion, working with these periods of contemplation over a period of years will reliably result, in the long run, in a more clarified and seasoned web of consciousness, a consciousness that is more flexible and more responsive to the will of the meditator. We may say that, in our opinion, there are times of the day that are especially efficacious to meditation. Two of those times are efficacious because of the waxing and waning of night energies and day energies. The time of the crossover from day to night and the crossover from night to day are times from the area of inner planes and of the world of nature as well is temporarily quiet. There is a characteristic hush of energies coming and energies going, a quiet sense of the changing of the guard, if you will, in terms of obtaining the most calm and peaceful outer atmosphere for one's own work in consciousness. The dawning and the gloaming are two efficacious times for entering the silence. However, the evening in your culture and in most entities' family lives is a time of activity, when there is virtually no opportunity to achieve a time of solitude and quiet contemplation. We would therefore recommend the hours between approximately 5 and 7 in the morning, or alternatively, because of the way your peoples move time around to suit their need of daylight, those 2 hours before and after dawning, whenever they may be, are recommended as times for sitting in solitude and following the breath. It is often helpful in this practice to be sure that the body is upright and yet comfortable, and that it is completely warm, so that there is not the pulling consideration of cold feet, cold fingers, or cold noses. This instrument has upon occasion wrapped a blanket about her shoulders and made a little cocoon for this practice, and this is certainly a good way to achieve that stasis of heat, so that you are neither too hot nor too cold, and the body's senses are not being pulled away from following the breath in order to attend to discomfort. We do not recommend a supine or prone position for the reason of the ease with which it is possible to move into sleep from these positions. We recommend the upright spine. To support a life that has a meditative practice as one of its centers, it is well to tune the consciousness throughout the day in short bursts. It is well, for instance, to create a noon-hour moment of contemplation, whether it be 5 seconds or 5 minutes. For that is the height of the day's energies, and it is well to stop at the height and appreciate the deeper self. This is similarly true at the afternoon begins to turn to evening at perhaps 4 or 5 in the evening. It is well to stop to appreciate the fullness of the day's work. Again, at the supper time or thereafter at approximately 7, it is well to stop for a few seconds or a few moments to appreciate the energies of the incoming night. And then, at bedtime, it is well to pause to look back upon the day, to view the day in your mind, and balance those things that you see as dwelling in imbalance before relinquishing consciousness for the night. We would also include, for those times when it is desired to ramp up or intensify one's seeking, the invaluable hour of about 3 or 3:30 in the morning, that time when the energies of the night are at their height. We do not, however, recommend tearing up your peace or destroying your rest in order to create the perfect practice. Play, my sister, with each of these ideas as you create your own practice. Remember as you do so that meditation is not a practice apart from living. Indeed, it could easily be said that the goal of a meditative practice and the supporting moments of remembrance throughout the day and the evening is to so reconfigure the mind that it becomes easier and easier for the mind to dissolve into consciousness as a basic default setting for one's everyday life. It is well to have a slight tinge of meditative practice ongoing at every breath that you take. Such an access on a steady state to the deeper aspects of consciousness can indeed transform the life experience and certainly accelerate the path of spiritual evolution. Question. Quote, I have 3 points on which I need clarification. The first one is by consciousness, and this focusing on the consciousness. Is that what is called the method of awareness watching awareness? We are those of Quo and are aware of your query, my sister. There is a similarity betwixt those two ideas, my sister. The figure of awareness watching awareness is a good description of how the mind or consciousness feels within meditation, for as the persistent and hectic thoughts of the daylight mind and its choice-making characteristics pop up within the meditative state, there is that consciousness aware of consciousness that chooses not to be aware of the rising and falling of desultory thoughts. However, awareness conscious of awareness has within it the figure of the seeker, which is attempting to meditate, whereas when we say consciousness as opposed to the mind or mental activity of the brain, we are speaking of a consciousness that is the same for all and that is also congruent with the logos, or the one original thought of unconditional love. If awareness is conscious of awareness, then that puts the individual solidly in the middle of that consciousness. So, in the one figure, there is the individual. In the other figure, there is the inference that this consciousness is not only the consciousness of you as an individual, but also each and every other sentient being as an individual. There is one consciousness, and each individual finds entry into that consciousness. Question. I'll move on to the second of the 3 clarifications that I wish, which is, when you speak of not lying in the supine position for meditation because one might fall asleep, is that because sleep is in some way bad or dangerous, or is it just that it's not a productive state of meditation? We are those of Quo and are aware of your query, my sister. We suggest that one avoid sleep when in meditation for the simple reason that sleep ends the meditation. The sleep state, or states we should say, are in and of themselves useful, and we may speak upon those if you wish. However, the practice of meditation is only useful when the entity meditating remains conscious, for once one's consciousness is taken away, there is no will to meditate, or a person who is meditating. That set of intentions and activities vanishes upon the onset of the sleep state. Question. So I'll ask the third of my clarifications. When you talk about contemplating on the tarot or zodiac, or the tree of life, does that not cause thoughts to arise? And if we are trying to ignore thought during the process of meditation, is this not counterproductive? We are those of Quo and are aware of your query, my sister. A contemplative meditation is not the same as pure meditation, and its value is far greater to some personality types than to others. However, the suggestion is based upon our awareness that the archetypal mind dwelling in the roots of consciousness is possessed of a sacred geometry and a characteristic division into great arteries of pure motion which have regularized relationships one to the other. A sense of increasing familiarity with and a comfort within these networks of great arteries and rivers of emotion gradually creates within an individual a sophistication, a seasoning, a sure-footedness when in deeper states of meditation. You are quite accurate in perceiving that such contemplations do include thought. There will inevitably be those thought processes which start with one point of contemplation and move to inferences gained from that contemplation to imagery systems which spring from such contemplation and to the eventual putting together of various points within the discipline of looking at the archetypal mind which is chosen by the seeker. However, it is to be pointed out that these processes of thought tend to be direct insight or what this instrument would call gnosis, rather than tending towards the use of the analytical mind. If the analytical mind takes over from the faculty of direct insight, then you are quite accurate in seeing that the practice of these contemplative meditations would be, to some extent, obviated. It is not the aim of such contemplations to activate the powers of analysis, but rather the powers of intuition, insight, and gnosis. We are those of Quo, and we thank the one known as El for this very central question which engages our affections. We are very fond of meditation. We see it as the great building block of increased flexibility of the spirit within incarnation, and see that flexibility as yielding tremendous benefits to the seeker, both at levels below the conscious mind and as the entity's conscious mind takes on the business of the day. The heart of truth is the one great original thought. One dances about that thought until one at last yields to silence and allows the silence to act as a key. The gateway to intelligent infinity lies beyond the door which is opened by the key of silence. We wish you good journeying, my sister, and as always, a simple mental request shall bring us to you to offer our carrier wave of love that will help stabilize and give a battery for your own, sometimes fluctuating energies. It is our privilege and our pleasure to be available to those who would ask for our help. We would at this time transfer this contact to the one known as Jim in order that we may harvest any remaining queries on the minds of those present. Question: can you speak to the means or some of the means by which a higher self may be contacted? The second part of that is, what fruits may be expected from such a contact, and would this be useful as a step in seeking the gateway to intelligent infinity? I am Quo, and am aware of your query, my brother. With your permission, we would speak to the second portion of your query first, and state that the fruits of contact with that portion of yourself you have called the higher self are to a great extent a realization of the true self, a stepping into the true nature of existence. This is a stepping into a reality which has far fewer veils, my friend, so there is much more of what you would call the truth that is available to one which is able to make contact with the higher self portion of the great self. Thus, an entity may be inspired, may be inspirited. He may move forth in service which is far more efficient, shall we say, in that it partakes of a balance of love and wisdom. There are various methods by which one may fruitfully contact this higher self portion of the greater self. The most usual means, shall we say, is through a disciplined meditation, the meditating upon the desire to know the self, to seek the self, to be of service to this higher self, is that which is likened to the knocking upon a door which shall surely be opened to one which continues to knock. The use of the dream state is another means by which one may make contact with the higher self, by stating to the other self upon retiring for the evening that the desire is a contact with the higher self, in either the state which you call the dreaming or the state of consciousness which is before dreaming and after the moving into the subconscious mind. The preconscious state of awareness, which may be likened unto the carrier wave of a radio or television station within your culture, upon which there is supplied a signal that may be perceived by the one seeking the higher self. There is also the opportunity to contact the higher self in contemplation that is also undergone or undertaken on a regular basis for this very purpose, so that the seeker retires to a certain special location within its physical domicile or within the natural environmental surrounding the domicile and places the self in a contemplative state. It would be desired when making contact with the higher self to keep handy the paper and pencil, so that those flashes of inspiration or hunches of intuition may then be noted or may be recorded as the beginning communication with the higher self. There is also another means by which this contact may be approached. That is with the assistance of one who would serve as the hypnotist, helping the seeker to relax into a meditative state so that the guided meditation may be undertaken, utilizing the services of the hypnotist that would then aid the seeker through the guided meditation to make contact with the higher self. Side note, check out my meditation on uniting with the higher self. Question: yes, thank you very much. That was very helpful. The second query has to do with the manner in which a meditation may proceed and the meditative states that are obtained within the course of one or more meditations. It seems to me in my experience that I come to various states to which I just give idiosyncratic names that resonate to me, if not to anybody else, such as bliss or splendor or glory. And as I come to these experiences, and they can be somewhat overwhelming. It seems to me that I get into a quandary. It's a quandary about whether to stop and explore that experience or to push on, so to speak, and to seek to go further. I'm wondering whether it is Quo's opinion that the former, that is, the exploration, is useful in establishing a base camp or a beachhead as one continues the daily practice of meditation, or whether one should always go for the gold. I am Quo and am aware of your query, my brother. We are of the opinion, through our own experience, that the seeking of the highest level of awareness at any particular meditative period is that which is to be recommended. And of course, my brother, as you know, the highest form of awareness is the fully experienced presence of the one infinite creator. It is always helpful to meditate, however well or poorly the meditation is undertaken. Any fruits gained in meditation will aid the entity in its progress toward union with the one. When the door is open toward the union, we recommend going through the door rather than exploring what comes before the door. Question: I perceive myself becoming more and more warier than usual this weekend. I wonder, firstly, if you can confirm that this is a fact and not simply an illusion, and secondly, if there would be anything that I might do to create rest for myself in the process of doing this work. I am Quo and am aware of your query, my sister. We may confirm your supposition that the wariness that you feel is indeed wariness, for you have expended a great amount of the energy of mind, body, and spirit, the elan vital, which is available to each as a daily gift, shall we say, of the one creator. It would be helpful in your future experiences of teaching intensive group channeling sessions such as this one, if you were indeed able to take more periods of rest into sleep, for this is most helpful for your physical vehicle at this time. It has been expending energy at a rather high rate for a longer than usual duration of your time and has the need of being regenerated, replenished in its energy sources. Question: well then, I don't know if you can answer me any further, but I'm looking at the way that our lives are structured, where you get up in the morning and you have a morning meal and you have a lunchtime meal and you have an evening meal. I've been taking a nap after lunch. I don't see a way to take a nap after breakfast. I am then assuming that the further nap that you would suggest would be one at approximately 5 o'clock in the afternoon when we finish our work. Would that be correct? I am Quo and am aware of your query, my sister. As we became aware of this refinement of your query, we also became aware of a mistake upon our part in answering your first query. Our mistake was in the assumption that the query concerning the weariness and how to balance this weariness was in relation to this particular weekend and this type of weekend. As we observed your second query, we become aware that this in regard to your daily round of activities. In this second type of activity, that which is undertaken upon a daily basis throughout your week, we find that your body is functioning for you in that it sleeps as is needed, whether you desired it or not. We would recommend moving in harmony with your bodily choices and would suggest that this amount of sleep is appropriate and with no added sleep periods recommended. Is there any further query, my sister? Yes, thank you, Ko. I was still in the mode of talking about a weekend just exactly like this one. In actuality, any gathering that we have has basically the same curriculum. There's a morning activity, then a lunch, an afternoon activity, then a supper, then an evening activity or a lack of activity. I was looking for another place to put a nap within the context of a weekend gathering such as this one. If you have any recommendations, I'd be glad to hear it. I am Quo and am aware of your query, my sister. Our recommendation for your particular physical vehicle would be to be sure that there is a sleeping or at least resting period that would follow each activity. Thus, with 3 activities during the day, there would be the need for 3 resting periods as well. Is there any further query, my sister? Not at all, thank you so much. I am Quo, and we thank you once again, my sister. Is there another query at this time? I am Quo, and as it appears that we have for now at least exhausted the queries for this group, we would thank each one again for partaking in this channeling session, for lending the energies, the interest, the inspiration, and the desire to be of service that is so greatly appreciated by our social memory complex. At this time, we shall take our leave of this group and this instrument. We leave each in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Adonai, my friends. Adonai Vasu Boragas. That concludes these 2 channelings. There's so much to talk about. To start off with some of the last questions that were asked, it's interesting, when I interviewed Jim McCarty, Carla Rucker would just get so fatigued when she would channel. It is very, very energy reducive. When they channel, she would get tired and she would lose weight in some cases. And it was very intensive when she did the raw material. She lost a lot of energy in that process. So I found the first channeling to be very inspiring for future meditations. The idea that we can do some meditations focusing on different archetypes. And something I'm learning a lot more about that we also learned from this is the relationship between the different points on the Kabbalah. If you've seen the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, it's not just the picture itself, but the pathways between each of those portions, which are also archetypes. So that is an important consideration that is also related to the tarot and the horoscope. Meditating on the different aspects of the horoscope, meditating on the different portions of the tarot, the idea of the spirit within the tarot as a portion of the archetype. There's a whole bunch of things that we can pull from this. But the important point is the magical personality, the adept who becomes magical in this process has to do it humbly and without really any desire for material gain. You gain a great amount of light through the process that they're explaining here. And they even imply at the beginning that the true adept, especially from the old days, would meditate for hours on end. This is not something that you would necessarily do with 30 minutes. You can become somewhat of an adept, but you may not fully move into the full creator. If you want to understand the creator fully, then you need to understand all the archetypes of that creator. The creator is all these things that are in the tarot, that are in the horoscope, that are parts of the Tree of Life. And so to move into alignment with the one creator, we don't just consider his foot or his hand. We consider the whole entire being, and in particular, the personality, which we can see within each of us. There are aspects of these different archetypes. But it's implied, especially even in the second channeling, that you can reach something special in a meditation beyond just the silence if you are intuitively just analyzing the state, the picture in many cases, the idea of a particular archetype. Maybe it's the sun or the moon. And focusing on that evokes the energy of that particular archetype. It gives you a deeper level of sophistication, is the word that they used, in awareness of your powers and your abilities. So this is something that is very interesting compared to the other quote material. They're really talking about a white magic brotherhood that's been around, that's been helping out the planet, and that you can go on this path. One of the paths that you can do is by learning the different archetypes. I really found the second channeling to be super fascinating because we get an idea that we can invite discarnate teachers to us. If you want to learn from Paramahansa Yogananda, you can make that your intention as you go into meditation and on a regular basis requesting help. And I believe that you get help from these figures. It's not just in your imagination. Many different discarnate teachers are available and out there, and they can help you, especially if they resonate with you. When you have a desire to learn something, the teacher will come, and oftentimes they can come through your dreams. You may not know you've been taught by some masters in the past through your own dream state, as is indicated. You may experience a connection with this teacher from your dream state. We get a distinction here in the advice on meditation between the meditative state and the sleep state, indicating that when it's in the sleep state, you're not really in the same meditative space. I do believe you can influence the subconscious mind, which is still somewhat aware in the sleeping state, but not in the meditative aspect. You need to still be aware. So there are differences in the two. And I think the subconscious mind is the most important part of a sleep meditation. You can also influence prior to or right afterwards, but it's an interesting distinction. And I do agree, if you have a problem falling asleep during meditations, then you need to sit up. I always say, lie down or sit up, whatever is most comfortable for you. But that implies if it's a regular guided meditation, you need to be awake during the whole thing. And for many people, they associate the sleep state with the laying down, and they will almost always go to sleep, even for small portions of the meditation. A lot of people really struggle staying awake in those situations. The spine should be straight, but don't freak out about the spine being straight. The straightness allows the energy to flow through the body. So if you can sit up, you will have a more effective and memorable meditative experience. And for that, I totally resonate what Kuo was saying. And I'm really fascinated with the question on how to contact the higher self It's really done through intention. In my own experience, in the moments where I really felt like I was communicating with my higher self, it's a powerful thing. The higher self will only communicate with you if you ask it. The higher self doesn't want to violate your free will, but if in meditation you make it your focus, you can communicate with your higher self. And the higher self knows stuff about everything. Once you have a connection to the higher self, it's like you have inside knowledge about all these amazing things that you didn't think you knew about. You know the answers to the questions. And you can ask questions with confidence about your future and which choices and decisions you make, because your higher self is for millions of years in the future and is you who already lived through this. Yes, it's like a time travel story in a science fiction book, but I get this sense when I've communicated with my higher self that the higher self is all about changing the past. The higher self, when it initially is formed, did not have the aid of the higher self. So there's a set timeline. It's not a time loop. Because of the nature of the illusion, time does not matter. And then the higher self goes back and tries to guide the self through these experiences, offering lessons and catalyst. It's all happening within this sort of informational space sometimes. So it's not on the conception of time that you would understand. But within the information space, the higher self exists from. It knows all the bad things that can happen, all the good things that can happen, and you can ask for its guidance, and the higher self will guide you. It's an amazing thing, and it's part of the awakening to the magical personality. The fully awakened magical personality is one with the higher self. One of my favorite lines from this: you have been a magician each time that you faced a situation in life and made a conscious choice to respond to catalyst that is offered you in a way which was not automatic in your responsive system. Gives you the idea that we're kind of zombies running through automatic responses to the environment around us. And when we reach a point where we move beyond this sort of programming, that is when we respond in a magical way, and that's when we're a magician. There's so many other aspects to this. I could talk about this forever. I will definitely go back and listen to portions of this myself, one of my more favorite readings of the different channelings. I'd love to get a feeling of what you liked the most about this and what it sort of tells you or updates your understanding of the Law of One, as each of these channelings always update my understanding of the Law of One. There's also a description of accidentally moving into an archetype. So it's implied when they're talking about the archetypes, sometimes you use this archetype inadvertently. You become one of them by moving through a situation with a certain degree of purity. Then they say they can't be more specific than this, for within each situation there's a wide range of ways in which you may be pure, depending on how you are assessing the situation that you see before you, and from that standpoint you are assessing it. And it's so ironic and coincidental that I just read a lecture by Neville Goddard called Purified by the Death of Your Delusion. And Neville Goddard talks about the only way that you can meet God is through a pure heart. He always talks about the line in the Bible that says that. And in that particular lecture, he's talking about the delusions, the prejudices, the different things that sort of block the purity of the heart. And when I say purity of heart, it means a lot of things, but it's those things that block the true light of the heart coming in and out. And that is what happens when we reach one of those archetypes in purity. That's the purity that we're reaching. So it's an interesting commonality between these two. And they use the word purity quite a bit in this channeling. In any case, I could talk about this forever. And there's so many cool things to talk about, including the difference between space-time and time-space. They mentioned it multiple times, and I almost read additional channeling, and I might do another episode. Time, space, and space-time are quite different. One in which time is dominant, one in which space is dominant, and one in which there is no time moving, but space is the form of movement. So they're both different, and some different beings live in time, space, and some live in space-time, and we could talk about it forever. It's super fascinating. In any case, you can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.